January 1978, Tehran. Thousands of religious school students pour into the streets. They are furious. A Tehran newspaper has published what they consider slanderous remarks against Ayatollah Khomeini, a religious leader exiled for 14 years. The students are soon joined by young Iranians, mostly unemployed, recent immigrants from the countryside. They're protesting the regime's excesses. The Shah is caught off guard. He switches between concession and repression. He assumes the protests are part of an international conspiracy against him. He is wrong. Over the next year, the protests will grow. Strikes will cripple the economy, and oil production will collapse. The economy will grind to a halt. And in January 1979, the Shah will flee Iran, never to return. The Iranian Revolution will overthrow a dynasty that ruled for over 50 years. It will bring to power an Islamic republic led by Ayatollah Khomeini, and it will transform the Middle East for decades to come. This is the story of the revolution that changed Iran and the Middle East forever. Let's go back to the beginning, the early 20th century. In 1925, a British-backed coup leads to the establishment of an authoritarian dynasty under Reza Shah Pahlavi. He turns the parliament into a rubber stamp for his decrees. Reza Shah comes to power during the 1920s, promoting the idea of 2,500 years of Persian monarchy. As the first Pahlavi monarch, he's determined to modernize and centralize Iran. Using the Western model of industrial development, he creates a system of political dictatorship through his own authority and leadership of the army. He bans political parties, suppresses revolts, forms a police force, and curtails the power of the clergy. We're now in the late 1940s. Political opposition to the Shah arises under Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh. He wants to limit the powers of the monarch. Fearing the spread of communist influence in Asia, the CIA launches a coup in 1953. Mossadegh is arrested and put in house arrest. The Shah is reinstated. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah, enacts martial law. Just like his father, he establishes a monarchical dictatorship designed to facilitate westernization. He centralizes the bureaucracy to ensure rapid capitalist development. He strictly controls the press and monitors all political opposition. During the Kennedy presidency, the US starts pressuring Iran to begin reform programs, especially regarding land. The Shah develops a 6-point program that becomes known as the White Revolution. But the reforms are mostly designed to maintain US-Iran relations. They don't make agriculture and rural development a high priority. As a result, the landless peasant class begins migrating to urban areas. If you are enjoying the video so far, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. If you want to check out more of my content, you can check out my latest video about the Stasi by clicking here. Now let's get back to the video, shall we? Between the 1950s and mid-1970s, Iran experiences incredible economic growth. Oil revenues in 1953 accounted for about $34 million. By 1975, that had risen to $19 billion. The expansive growth enabled the government to diversify the economy into energy, steel, petrochemicals, machine tools, and rubber. Iran also builds up its military capabilities and purchases many new weapons with its large budget. Through mass arms transfers from the US, Shah Reza Pahlavi builds one of the most powerful armed forces ever seen in the Middle East. His American-trained secret police, the Savak, terrorizes the population into submission through widespread killings, torture, and mass detentions. By the mid-1970s, most of the leftist, liberal, nationalist, and other secular opposition leaders have been successfully repressed through murder, imprisonment, or exile. Most of their organizations are banned. But it's impossible to suppress the Islamist opposition as thoroughly. Much of the organized opposition against the Shah is organized in mosques. In 1975, the Shah shifts all political activity into one party, the National Resurgence Party. He establishes himself as the Farmandar, the Great Commander, leading his people toward the, quote, Great Civilization. He uses a nationally televised address to call for elections to give credibility to the new one-party system. The Shah views success over religious opposition as the culmination of his struggle with deeply conservative clerics. But by creating a one-party state, he discards what little representative government remains. With a small support base and no forum, moderate and secular opponents of the Shah become radicalized. Many opt to join the religious opposition. This opposition is led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. When Khomeini arrives in Iran in 1979 to begin his revolutionary movement, he is returning from a 14-year exile. He had led a campaign against many of the Shah's reform programs. Government officials arrested him and forced him to leave Iran. He first left for Turkey, but soon moved to the Shiite holy city of Najaf in Iraq. Iranians visiting the holy place return home with tapes of Khomeini's sermons. The ideas presented in the tapes pose direct opposition to the Shah's authority. Khomeini led demonstrations during the 1960s against the White Revolution. Land reforms, suffrage for women and non-Muslims, and extraterritorial rights for the large number of American military personnel involved in modernizing the Iranian army. The Shah's military and security services, including the Savak secret police, crushed the opposition. Rather than making Khomeini a martyr, the government exiled him. Khomeini believes in rule by eminent Shiite Islamic figures. He believes that any individual who possesses the qualities of a religious ruler can lead his people. Although Khomeini deliberately obscures many of his basic philosophies in public speeches, he seeks to destroy the Pahlavi regime from the beginning. He emphasizes the need for clerical control over secular power. He believes that the government derives its legitimacy from God and that it needs a radical Islamic reconstruction of society. The increase in Western influence serves as a rallying point to unite most Shiite clerics against the regime. They manage to organize well and find resources and loyalty from important parts of Iranian society. Khomeini never loses touch with his lieutenants. He directs a growing force through personal letters and sermons on audio cassettes. The Shah's regime faces numerous challenges during the early 1970s. First, the government is inefficient and corrupt. Friends of the Shah gain great economic benefits while average Iranians suffer from inflation caused by petrodollars. Second, Iranian nationalists resent the special status enjoyed by the United States, which has stationed more than 50,000 military personnel and civilian advisors inside Iran. Third, the import of Western culture and ideas is especially disturbing to pious Muslims, who view Western ways as corrupting Islam. Open resistance begins in 1977, when Khomeini calls for strikes, boycotts, tax refusal, and other forms of non-cooperation with the Shah's regime. It's met with brutal repression by the government. The pace of resistance accelerates as massacres of civilians are answered by larger demonstrations. January 1978, the active phase begins. Angered by what they consider slanderous remarks against Khomeini by a Tehran newspaper, thousands of religious school students take to the streets. The brutal response of the Shah leads to many deaths. Millions stand against the Shah. Many rally around the clerics. It only serves to fuel the violence in a Shia-majority country where martyrdom plays a fundamental role in religious expression. A cycle of violence begins. Each death fuels further protests. All protest, even from the secular left or the religious right, is subsumed under the cloak of Shia Islam and crowned by the revolutionary cry, Allahu Akbar, God is great. The cry can be heard at protests and issuing from rooftops in the evenings. September 8th, the regime imposes martial law. Troops open fire against demonstrators in Tehran, killing dozens or hundreds. Weeks later, government workers begin to strike. On October 31st, oil workers also go on strike, demanding the release of political prisoners. It costs the government $60 million a day. In November, a general strike paralyzes the country further. These disruptions keep Iran at a standstill, even when the workers return to their jobs. By December 10th, hundreds of thousands of protesters take to the streets in Tehran alone. Much of Iranian society is in euphoria about the coming revolution. Secular and leftist politicians pile onto the movement, seeking to gain power in the aftermath. They ignore the fact that Khomeini is the very antithesis to all the positions they support. While it's increasingly clear to more secular Iranians that Khomeini is not a liberal, he is widely perceived as a figurehead. They believe power will eventually be handed to the secular groups. This will prove very untrue. During his exile, Khomeini coordinates this upsurge of opposition, especially from France after 1978. Hoping to preserve some Pahlavi influence, Mohammad Reza, with his declining health, abdicates in favor of his son on January 16, 1979. He boards a plane, never to return to Iran. In what is officially described as a vacation, the Shah and his family flee Iran. The Regency Council, established to run the country during the Shah's absence, proves unable to function. Prime Minister Shahpur Bakhtiar is incapable of creating compromise with either his former colleagues or Khomeini. Crowds in the excess of 1 million demonstrate in Tehran, proving the wide appeal of Khomeini, who arrives February 1st, 1979. 10 days later, on February 11th, Iran's armed forces declare their neutrality, effectively ousting the Shah's regime. Bakhtiar goes into hiding, eventually finding exile in France. Although sporadic and sometimes intense fighting continues for a month, the royalists' hopes end when Khomeini returns from exile and is greeted as a liberator by the vast majority of Iranians. His lieutenants already dominate Tehran and most large cities. They quickly extend their authority into the countryside. The new regime purges the armed forces and government of former imperial officials. Hundreds are executed, many more are tossed into prison. An Islamic security force, the Revolutionary Guards, assists in these actions and quickly grows into a military powerhouse purposely designed to counter the still suspect army. On April 1st, 1979, following an overwhelming support in a national referendum, Khomeini declares Iran an Islamic republic. Elements within the clergy promptly moved to exclude their former left-wing nationalist and intellectual allies from any positions of power in the new regime. A return to conservative social values is enforced. Most of the progressive rights given to women under the Shah are declared void. Revolutionary bands patrol the streets enforcing Islamic codes of dress and behavior. Throughout most of 1979, the Revolutionary Guards, originally created to forestall another CIA-backed coup like Mossadegh's, engage in activities to repress and intimidate political groups not supported by the ruling council and party loyal to Khomeini. The violence and brutality often exceed that which had taken place under the Shah. They suppress Western cultural influence. Many of the Western-educated elite flee the country. This anti-Western sentiment eventually manifests itself in the Iran hostage crisis. A group of Iranian protesters take over the US embassy, holds 66 hostages, and demands the extradition of the Shah, who is undergoing medical treatment in the US for his cancer. Through the embassy takeover, Khomeini's supporters can claim to be anti-imperialists just like the political left. It gives them the abilities to suppress most of the regime's left-wing and moderate opponents. The assembly of experts is overwhelmingly dominated by the clergy. They overwhelmingly approve the new constitution. It's based on Khomeini's vision of governance of the jurist, and gives sweeping power to the leader, Khomeini being the first. Centrists are steadily forced from power by conservatives within the government who question their revolutionary zeal. The revolution transformed every aspect of Iranian society. The people began to express intolerance toward everything associated with the Shah's regime, even the positive elements. Khomeini reversed virtually all major laws and reforms passed by the Shah's administration. The revolution that promised liberation from repressive monarchy delivered a new form of authoritarian rule. Khomeini's vision of an Islamic republic became reality, and Iran would never be the same.